sports.com. Joining us now, the outstanding anchor and reporter for Channel 4, Andrew Doak. Andrew, listen, it's great to have you with us, and welcome to the show in these very strange times we find ourselves immersed in.
Hey, Ken. Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. And, I feel like it's kind of unfortunate right now that we don't have sports going on, because I feel like this is a point in our country where I feel like, sports can be such a unifying effort and, bring people together from so many different backgrounds and races. And, we don't really have that welcome distraction right now. It's starting with the coronavirus, kind of sports took a back seat. And I think everybody's kind of concerned about the last week and just the state of everyone's emotion in the country right now. Just kind of a weird time. You're right.
It really is. And I've said for years that the New Orleans Saints are the biggest unifying force in this community. You're right. Brings together people from every imaginable background, and they're high-fiving and bonding and everything else. And at least for that 3-hour period or 3.5-hour period, people forget about any differences they might have. I simply wish that was more frequent in society in general.
I would agree as well. And I think, if I may, the frustration I think that just me as an individual has over the last couple of days is, I feel like there, and obviously I work in the media, but there seems to be a sense of wanting to create so much division within the media whenever you turn on the TV. And, I feel like there can be more mutual exclusivity throughout our country. I obviously don't know what it's like to be an African-American. I'm a white kid that came from a good background. And, I certainly don't know what it's like to be in other people's shoes. But, I know that I was pretty devastated to see the killing of George Floyd this week. I mean, when you watch the video, it's something that it's obviously hard to watch and something that leaves you pause. But, I think as many great protests have been going on this week, they've also been hijacked by some people who, don't have, any desire to really bring justice to George Floyd's name and represent him in the right way. And I don't like to see, people tearing up communities either. And I've really been glad that New Orleans hasn't been one of those cities that they've, seemed to do it the right way and be able to meet and protest peacefully, which I'm so all for. And I'm glad to see that's been going on in New Orleans, because that's been a welcome sight in my eyes.
Very much the case. Andrew Doak with us from Channel 4. The Pelicans, it looks like, will have a shot to resume their season based upon all reports, 22 teams, it appears. And some people said, wow, they're doing this to appease getting Zion involved. I don't think that's the case at all. It's nice to be able to see him have an opportunity and the Pelicans have an opportunity, but I think that's a little bit much to make a statement of that ilk. They were simply looking for a way to incorporate as many teams as possible without just jumping straight in to an 18 playoff in each conference. Your read on the situation?
Yeah, and, whether it's the Zion effect or not, I just think that, we heard Portland's Damian Lillard say last week that, look, if you're going to bring us back and if we're going to play games that aren't meaningful, he was like, I'm not going to be a part of it. And I felt the same way as him. If you're going to bring teams back, at least have them play a few regular season games, and then be able to set up the postseason in some way where, look, if the Pelicans, under the format that they've been talking about, come back and it's a 22-team format, they obviously aren't going to have the exact regular season or remainder of their regular season that they were going to have before, which was one of the easiest schedules, if not the easiest, I remember, remaining in the NBA, which is unfortunate. They're going to have to play, a different regular season based on who they have left, and then maybe they are able to get into a play-in tournament that then would determine, playoff seeding in both the Eastern and Western Conference. But either way, if the Pelicans have to go 5-0 to be able to get into the playoffs or whatever the case may be, I think that's going to be good to be able to have them play in a pressure scenario where they're fighting for their postseason lives, and at least they have a chance. I think that could benefit a young team like the Pelicans, and certainly, a young superstar like Zion Williamson. And I know that I would be glued to the TV, ready to watch every night.
While the Pelicans are the young team with the future and likely not winning any championship anytime real soon, the New Orleans Saints are just the opposite. They're a team that can win a championship. They're a veteran team, and they've chosen not to commence at all prior to training camp. Do you think this is a good move, the right move, or maybe they should have waited and tried to get people on board a little bit earlier than the end of July?
The one advantage that I think the Saints are going to have is they have so many pieces back, not only from last season, but they have continuity within this roster over the last several seasons. And so I think when you look at, the potential timetable that we've heard about NFL teams coming back being training camp and that basically being it. I mean, obviously OTAs and minicamp are obviously at the window at this point. A team like the Saints that has that veteran leadership and that continuity, I think is a team that's going to benefit more than anyone from the limited amount of preparation that teams are going to have going into this season. I think that especially early in the year, when you look at some of the division rivals that, have now popped up within the Saints division, like the Tampa Bay Bucks, Tom Brady's not going to have much time with these receivers, much less learn an offense that's going to be at least different than what he experienced with Bill Belichick in New England. And, he doesn't have any experience with these guys that he's going to be throwing the ball to. Granted, they're going to be really good receivers and tight ends that he's going to be throwing to and offensive skill position players that are going to be around him. But, I think from the get-go, someone like the Saints is going to have a unique advantage, and they're going to be able to hit the ground running a lot faster than other teams.
Visiting with Andrew Doak of Channel 4. And, of course, with regard to the NFC South, it's, I think, a better division for obvious reasons. Tampa Bay's clearly better. Atlanta definitely is going to be better than last year, and they have a lot of offensive weapons, and health could certainly benefit them after last year as well. Carolina, I don't think is that team yet, but they're certainly looking like they're trying to emulate the Saints in some ways, correct?
Yeah, no question about it. And, we even saw that after the story kind of came out a couple of days after when the Saints traded back up to get Tommy Stevens out of Mississippi State. Joe Brady, the former LSU co-offensive coordinator or passing game coordinator, was trying to go get him and get his own Taysom Hill. And so they're trying to bring some different elements to Carolina that are very similar to the Saints with Matt Rule and Joe Brady there. But, yeah, I think Carolina, in my estimation, is going to be bringing up the rear in the NFC South this season. They're much more the rebuild team. I think Atlanta probably finishes third. I think they have a lot of potential, but they just haven't lived up to it since they went to the Super Bowl and blew that 28-3 lead. But I really see the contenders as the Saints and the Bucks. And like I was saying, I think the Saints have the leg up on the Buccaneers right now, especially because of how this offseason is going to play out. But I just think that, the Saints have the championship experience over the last couple of years where they've been knocking on the door. And, obviously they haven't been able to get it done. They obviously had the bad call go against them 2 years ago where they basically had the key that they just weren't able to get through the door to get to the Super Bowl. But I see it playing out as a Breeze and Brady duel this upcoming season. And I think based on the national TV games and how they're starting the year against the Bucks, I think a lot of people that are fans of the league and work in the league see it that way too. And I think it's going to be an awesome season, regardless if, fans being in the stands. And, I'm just ready to get back to live sports in some capacity more than just watching golf on the weekends here and there.
Aside from the NFC South, the NFC West certainly looks like a good division. Of course, the Rams were 9-7 last year. Seattle 11-5. San Francisco, we know, was 13-3. Went to the Super Bowl, and Arizona is clearly going to be an improved football team. So that looks like a pretty tough division, if not the toughest in the NFC.
No question. That is a battle. I'm still trying to figure out what exactly Houston was doing trading for a running back that's only had really one good year and giving away DeAndre Hopkins, who in my opinion is the best receiver in the NFL. I probably would gonna get dragged on Twitter for saying that because I think Michael Thomas is number 2. But just between that whole division, that's just a murderer's row. And that's also why when you think about San Francisco missing their chance and kind of blowing a lead against Kansas City, a lot of people might assume, well, they'll be right back, in that similar position this year. Well, not so fast. They have a lot of competition within that division. And, I think they have a much tougher road to, be back in contention than the Saints do, because, Seattle's going to come back with a vengeance too. And to be honest with you, I think the last couple of years, probably the most efficient and arguably the best quarterback in the NFL, given what the lack of talent that's around him, has probably been Russell Wilson in Seattle. And so that whole division is going to be must-watch TV this upcoming year.
But another minute and a half, 2 minutes with Andrew Doak of WWL Television. Just, a final thought, and it's the million-dollar question. Are we going to see football at all three levels, high school, college, and pro? I think the answer is definitely yes. The question is, and I don't think any of us can answer it, what is it going to look like? And you look at things as we stand in Louisiana, went to phase 2 today. If things progress the way they're progressing, we'll certainly at least get to phase 3 sometime in the next month, if not to phase 4. So barring any setbacks, I certainly not only think football is going to be played, but I think you're going to be able to gather at least 50%, if not more, of people to attend these games. You have any thought process there?
Yeah, I think especially at the college and pro level, there is just too much money on the table to not have these seasons happen. At the college level, I mean, look, football is funding all of these, losing revenue sports. And we've already seen some men's baseball programs in anticipation of this year, even some of those schools that don't have football programs to be able to keep them afloat have dropped some of their baseball programs, which is in other men's and women's sports, which is really unfortunate. But look, I think college football is going to happen. I think the NFL is going to happen. The good thing is for the NFL, if they don't have fans in the stands, they have a big TV contract that's going to keep them afloat to be able to make this season happen. But I think it is going to look different. How different? I don't know exactly. Are you going to have 25% of stadiums filled so that you can social distance? The other question is, how are you going to be able to go get in line to be able to get a beer and a hot dog or whatever? I mean, we obviously still haven't figured those questions out, but I know that I would guarantee, I would guarantee, in my opinion, that football is going to happen this fall. It's just going to look mightily different than what we're all used to.
Follow him on Twitter at Andrew Doak _WWL. Watch him on Channel 4 on a regular basis. Andrew, appreciate the visit. Keep up the great work, and let's hope we're watching live sports very soon.
Hey, I'm with you, man. Thanks for having me on, Ken. Have a great night, man.
My pleasure. Thanks, Andrew.